Welcome back. So Wednesday we had Les from German Diesel Motorworks down to install our new CP3 rotary fuel pump. That's the high pressure fuel pump that replaces the piston one, which just wasn't going to be, cutting it for what we're trying to do in terms of horsepower. So there you can see it's basically installed there, and here's just a different angle. So got that all installed, and Les was nice enough to help get a bunch of the stuff back on the engine, because that's kind of what I was waiting for to get that done. Anyway, and meanwhile the guys are busy preparing these wing spar plugs so they can pull molds off there. So here you can see they're putting the rubber profile around the edge there that makes up that vacuum channel, and that one's already done, and so the other one's almost finished as well. So back on the engine, the next thing to do was to install the fuel lines to the fuel pump from the tank. So there's the lines there, so the feed and the return, and then that one there, that's just a TD in return from the fuel rail. So for any extra fuel, just goes back there, and that's going to run back to the tank. And you see just down the side here, I've put in a valve, and again this is just all for the test stand. That's just a cut-off valve there, and then there's the fuel pump that I had in there before, and down the bottom there was the return. So yeah, here's where the return flows down there, and that runs back to the other side of the tank. So we'll see how that all sets up. It won't be long and we'll be able to start this engine, hopefully at least try in the next couple of weeks. So the next thing was to get the turbos in place for the last time, hopefully shouldn't have to remove them again. So basically got them all bolted up there, or both of them, and starting to get all the different connections hooked up there. So it's all fitting nicely, but you see you've got the V-band clamps on there, and then that one there, connections, got all the different hoses there, and I've even connected up the wastegate controller there. I still got to put the little C-clip on there. That's pretty much done, and everything's sort of fitting nicely there. So I'm pretty happy with how that's turning out. And there you can see the guys completed getting those rubber profiles put on there. So both of those now ready, all waxed up and ready to have the molds pulled. So that'll be that was actually on Friday they started that. And meanwhile the guys were cutting the steel for the next one. So these will be the aileron spars. They're basically just parallel the other one. You'll see more on it shortly. And Jeff's been working on fitting that other door frame, because the other one was being done, and he's bonded in the little hardpoint blocks, the FR4 blocks in there. Got this one all fitted now, so that's be ready to bond into place once we get the roof bonded on finally. And this is Friday, so the first of the wing spar plugs now got the top coat sprayed on there, black top coat. So the guys we're switching back to carbon for this one, because it's one of these things that's going to be possibly will be cured in the oven. So we're in carbon mold for that one. And keeping along with the engine, next thing to do was to create these oil feed and return lines for the turbos. You've seen that bracket that I was working on a while ago that has the feed and the return coming out of it. So this is PTFE stainless steel braided hose, or tubing basically, and so I'm just cutting it there with the metal wheel. Just cut it one side and cut it and flip it over and cut it the other side, and that gives me a nice clean cut that doesn't sort of mess up the stainless steel or anything like that. So the goal is here to get the all the oil connections hooked up for the turbo, and that means that the engine will be basically all finished with respect to the oil side of things, and then we can actually put some oil in it next week, and then we'll be able to turn it over more for when Ed comes here and takes some readings off of the crank and cam sensors, because he needs to be able to sort of crank it over and see what sort of readings are coming off those sensors. So anyway, that's all coming along nicely, getting the oil hooked up done. So here's the first line with the fittings all put on there, and this is the one that is basically the return from Turbo 2 back to the housing there, the stand where Turbo 1 is fit on, which basically the factory return is in. And meanwhile the guys are cutting the foam for this next platform, which is again the aileron spar, or the first side aileron spar. And here's that fitting that I was telling about. So that's the oil return there, and then there's the feed there on that pedestal that the first turbo sits on. So that's what we're basically hooking up there. And the return there that's from the second turbo there. That basically has to run over to the other one. So that's what that first line is. that I created, and here I'm basically installing it there and just threading it on there. Of course, you know, I'm just doing it here and I'm going to tighten it later on, but this is mainly just to fit it, and didn't really cause me too many problems. But I think I may have to redo this one because I have a feeling it's going to interfere a little bit with the upper pulley from the drive system, so I may have to create it slightly longer and just sort of have a larger loop there so it doesn't get in the way. But anyway, not a big deal. This was my first braided line that I was creating, so it was a good test of, you know, what it takes to set one of those up, and Jeff was guiding me along the way because obviously he's done it a zillion times before. And so the next step is the feed line. So this is the first one, and that comes out of, you know, starts with the main feed coming out the engine, and that will run into this Y thing there, and that'll split it off, and one will go to one turbo and one will go to the other. And here's Devon just finishing off putting or gluing the foam down for this right aileron spar plug, which is pretty straightforward and shouldn't take too long to actually run that. And here's the next line. So this is the first one coming out of the Y going to turbo number 1, and with a little right angle on there. And here's the second line that goes to turbo number 2, and that's quite a bit longer because it actually has to loop around turbo number 1 and sort of around the back of turbo number 2. But you'll see in a second how it all lays out. It didn't take long to create those once I had the hang of it. And here's the guys just putting down the second coat, or second layer actually already, of carbon fiber on this first wing spar mold. So moving along quickly with that one. And it's the end of the day there on Friday, so there's that one that's all done and in peel ply. It still needs to have the be bulked up with the heavier layers, but that'll be on Monday. So that'll be the first of those down. And here's this first aileron spar, the right side aileron spar getting run on the machine now. And again, not really that complicated, so it shouldn't take too long to finish that one. And lastly, here's the progress. So there's basically the oil return line in there, and that's all hooked up and tightened up now, at least, you know, for testing the engine to run the first time. And there's the feed underneath there going out with the first line put on it, and there's the Y that splits it off to turbo 1 and turbo 2. So there's the first one going to turbo 1 there, and it just drops in the feeds into the top of the turbo. And there's the second line that runs underneath the intake and over to turbo number 2. So those are all done, and so anyway, next week we'll put some oil in the engine. Anyway, that's our update for this week, and thanks again for watching.